entitled Aunt tries to pick the lock on the door to my sister and my bedroom. Cast: me, the majestic gummy bear; Sarah, my twin; Kevin, my service dog; Aunt, woman who is dead to me; entitled cousin, cousin who is also dead to me; uncle, Sarah and I's uncle. Sorry for any errors in advance. My aunt came to spend the week with us while she was in town. As a result, this was by far the worst week of my life so far. Aunt is the type of person who firmly believes that a guest basically owns everything, and the host should do everything in their power to accommodate the guest regardless of any reason. Before anyone asks, no, Aunt didn't go crazy whenever we didn't give her something either she or cousin wanted. Aunt would either huff and mutter under her breath or make it a point that everyone knew how unhappy she was by talking about it loudly on the phone. But cousin, however, would act like we just murdered his firstborn. At first, everything was fine. Uncle explained the extensive ground rules that aunt and cousin needed to follow, that I was mute, and why I needed Kevin, along with how to differentiate between Sarah and I. We dye our hair differently. I'm not going to go into detail of the rules except for the major one, which is also the one that cousin and subsequently aunt took extreme issue with. Don't go into Sarah and number 31's room. Period. I know that Uncle went to great lengths to explain this rule and the importance of it. Why, you may ask? Because Aunt argued with Uncle about why the rule even existed, and Uncle ended up having to raise his voice, which quickly ended the argument altogether, finishing it with the threat of kicking Aunt and cousin out of the house if he so much as hears a hint about either of them trying to enter the room. Of course, Sarah and I quickly learned how seriously they took the rule. Now, the door to Sarah and I's room has 2 locks on it, a deadbolt and doorknob lock. To those who may be wondering, Uncle had them installed per Sarah and I's request shortly after Uncle was granted full custody of us. Uncle, of course, has a key in case anything happens, but he respects Sarah and I's need for privacy, so he just calls for one of us if he needs us. For obvious reasons, neither aunt nor cousin were given a key. For the first 2 days there wasn't any issue. As usual, I would go straight to our room so neither of them could try to interact with me. But that didn't stop cousin from incessantly knocking and asking to come in to play on our Xbox. Sarah would tell him no, but when she wasn't there I'd just slide a note under the door which promptly said, no. Cliché, yes, but neither Sarah nor I trusted cousin or aunt with our cell numbers, so notes were the next best thing. The 3rd day, Aunt was waiting for Sarah and I to get home. Aunt, cousin's name, wants to play on your game system. It's an Xbox, so can you please let him in so that he can play? It'll only be for a few hours, and you can sit with him if you want. Sarah, sorry, but he's not allowed inside, and neither are you. Aunt's name, but he is allowed to play on the Wii. It's already hooked up to the TV in the living room. I think the controllers are next to the Wii itself. Aunt, he thinks the games for it are too childish, and I agree. So, will you please let him in so that he can play? You two are working all day anyway, so it won't be a problem. I would like to point out that the only Wii games we have are the Metroid Prime series and Metroid Other M. For those who haven't played those games, they are far from childish. Sarah pointed that out, but Aunt wasn't having any of it. To her, games in general were all childish and we should let him into play, or move the Xbox into the living room. An option that was simply out of the question. Sarah unlocked the door and had to actively block Aunt from trying to step inside while we went into our room. Aunt didn't like this, but when Sarah casually asked if I had texted Uncle that we got home safely, Aunt backed off with a huff. Yes, Aunt made a point to not mention anything whenever Uncle was around. According to Sarah, both Aunt and cousin never talked about our room when he was home. They'd mind their own business or make small talk with Uncle. They eventually stopped trying to talk to Sarah after she yelled at cousin to leave her alone. The next day, Thursday, Uncle and Sarah had to go to the store for some things, I forget what. I didn't think much of it and decided to play on the Xbox. Around maybe 4 hours, I lose track of time when playing. After they left, I heard an odd scratching noise at the door. It wasn't Kevin because he was sitting next to me. I texted Sarah asking if she and Uncle were back yet, but she replied saying that they were still at the store, but would be home soon. By then, the doorknob was shaking and I heard Aunt telling cousin to be careful, and you can't force the lock. As soon as I heard that, I texted Sarah what was going on. Sarah's response surprised me. Sarah, text, get on that other game you play that says you died a lot and turn the volume all the way up. Like, the time when you first played it. She was talking about Dark Souls 3, and it took me a moment to understand what she meant. Then it clicked. When booting the game up, it'll show 2 companies/game engines. Not sure what the brand names shown are, or something along those lines, then it'll play loud choir-like music before showing the main menu. Basically, when I first got the game, my ears were ringing for almost 30 minutes and Uncle was swearing every other word while yelling to turn the volume down. Since then, I have the TV muted, then slowly turn the volume up until it's at a comfortable level that isn't on par with an air raid siren blaring in your house. I wish I could say that the end result of Sarah's proposition was more satisfying, but it wasn't. Right after the loud blaring of dramatic choir music, I managed to catch what I presume was duck, subsequently followed by a heavy thud, then some smaller thuds. I guess the music startled cousin or aunt, and they tripped while trying to leave, but I don't know. The music is, as I said, really loud, and I had my headphones on cause I didn't want my ears to be ringing for a while. According to Sarah, when she and Uncle questioned Aunt, she kept demanding to know what kind of games I'm playing, why I would play it so loud, and what reason would I have to play games in the first place. Aunt then accused me of ruining her nap and nearly giving her a heart attack in the process. When Sarah asked why she was trying to pick the lock, Sarah mentioned the two little statements I overheard and claimed to have no idea what Sarah was talking about and that I was clearly hearing things if I played games at that volume all the time. Aunt demanded that I apologize to her and cousin for having the TV at max volume and scaring Aunt like that, but Uncle immediately shot her down, telling her that if she ever dared to do that again, then he'd kick her out. When Aunt pointed out that he previously said he wouldn't hesitate to, Uncle said, "Uncle, well, if you'd prefer I immediately take the girls at their word, then the door is right over there." Sarah then explained that Aunt wasted no time in trying to correct herself and apologizing, but Uncle brushed her off. Aunt did a lot more, but that's for another post when I get the time. Now, you may be wondering why we wouldn't let Aunt or cousin into our room. Why didn't we just move the Xbox in the living room? The reason is that Sarah and I have a very deep distrust towards anyone in general, double for anyone in our family, which was developed over the entirety of our time in high school, 5 years. When Uncle told us about Aunt's impending arrival, we really weren't sure what to think. To Sarah and I, our family is dead to us. So finding out that we had an aunt who hasn't disowned us was a bit of a shock. But we weren't about to welcome them with open arms. Uncle made our views very clear to Aunt, and even went so far as to have her explain to Sarah that she understood our apprehensiveness. I couldn't bring myself to be there because of my anxiety about the whole situation, so Sarah explained it to me afterwards. So Aunt knew full well just why we were refusing to let either of them into our room, where we spent a vast majority of our time. With Aunt and cousin in the house, our room was the only place we could go to relax in peace, so we weren't about to let someone we only just met into our one place that we can call our own. I'll post some more stories about Aunt and cousin if any of you would like to see more. Edit. For clarification, we think that Aunt was trying to pick the lock to our room so that cousin could play on our Xbox. But we don't know for certain since Aunt has kept denying that she tried in the first place. Sarah and I live with our uncle because our mother passed away. Our father, if one could ever call him that, is in jail where he belongs. Our family blames us for him being put in jail, hence why they've disowned the two of us. Please don't ask why he is in jail, because I don't feel comfortable talking about the things he did to us. According to Uncle, Aunt explained that she hated how the family has treated us and wanted to see for herself if everything our family was saying was true. Uncle felt that Aunt wanted to be the voice of reason, so he allowed it. But after everything she did during her stay, he won't be allowing it again anytime soon. Finally, I use sign language, aka sign, to communicate. I'm almost always with Sarah, so she translates for me. Uncle taught me how to use sign, and he taught Sarah as well. Sarah is not mute. Edits 2, 3, and 4. Thank you so much to the Anons who gave me my first gold, first and second silvers. Also, I want to let everyone know that Sarah has been reading everyone's comments with me, and we both want you all to know that we are beyond words. We can't thank you all enough for your support. Some of you have asked for another post about Aunt and cousin. I'll try to make another post today when I have the time about when they got kicked out. I'll put a link to it in this post when I make it. Again, thank you everyone for your support. It means the world to us. Edit 5. Please read this edit as it contains a major piece of info that is important. First off, a huge thank you to the Anon who gave me my first platinum. Thank you. Now, a couple people have pointed out something I failed to add, and I'm really sorry. Sarah and our uncle tried to meet Aunt and cousin halfway when he asked about the Xbox. I tried to come out to get to know cousin because I felt that at least cousin deserved a chance. I'm a big fan of Metroid and thought that Metroid would be good to talk with him. He said he would give it a shot, which is why we moved the Wii into the living room. However, it was obviously not enough. He went back to asking, insisting that he play the Xbox in our room, which is strictly off limits. Even Uncle doesn't come into our room. Uncle explained this, so did Sarah, and both warned that he was close to crossing a lot of well-defined boundaries that were explained when they first showed up, which is why Sarah yelled at cousin when she did. Cousin refused to listen to reason, but Uncle almost managed to reach a middle ground where we were fine with moving the Xbox into the living room. This next thing is something I had difficulty with adding in, and just omitted it. Aunt became fed up with the back and forth, she admitted it, and told us to grow up and get over our childish insecurities already. This was the first time she crossed a line, because remember that she had been told by Uncle why we were wary about her and Cousin. So, she knew why we had these childish insecurities, as she so eloquently put it. Insecurities that were forced onto us by her brother, our father, and Uncle made sure that she knew it since, according to Uncle, she had called him beforehand and told him that she felt bad about how the family has treated us and she wanted to see for herself if what the family is saying is true. Understand that we really did try as best we could, but we have a hard enough time, as it is even going to see the therapist that was provided to us. So, asking us to just so casually trust two members that suddenly wants to understand our side of things from our family, that has made it their mission to harass us, and at one point even tried to have Uncle arrested under false charges, but also tried to have me committed to a mental hospital, which would have effectively separated me and Sarah, which is something that our family knows would kill us. Our reluctance and general distrust towards Aunt and Cousin is warranted. We did our best, but Aunt showed just how much she really cared in that one statement. I hope this clears some things up for everyone. Update. I made another post about Aunt and Cousin which can be found entitled Aunt Takes Issue with There Being Locks on the Medicine Cabinet. I marked this post as 18+ because it contains a reference to attempted self-harm. This is about the same Aunt and Cousin from a previous post. Click so you can know what's going on. I would also like to point out that I use sign language to communicate. I am not deaf, and I am not willing to talk about why I am mute.
So please do not ask.
Sorry about any errors. Cast. Me. The majestic gummy bear, Sarah, my twin, Kevin, my service dog, Uncle, our uncle, Aunt, entitled Aunt who is dead to me, Cousin, entitled Cousin who is dead to me. As I said in my previous post, our aunt really believed that as guests, she owned everything. This happened the next day after the ordeal with her and Cousin trying to pick the lock on our door. Something you should know, me and Sarah have our own set of rules. It's something that we chose to do as a way to help each other since we moved in with our uncle. One of our rules is that when we have a nightmare that wakes us up, we wake up the other to let them know and we talk about it. That particular night, Sarah had a nightmare. It was early, about 4:30, and everyone was asleep. Therefore, Sarah decided to use sign, short for sign language, so she wouldn't wake anyone. I decided to make tea, and we talked. Aunt was the first to wake up. Given her previous stunt, Sarah kept using sign. Aunt didn't say anything, but she looked annoyed. We continued to talk until Aunt came from the bathroom, looking even more annoyed. Aunt, I have a headache. Sarah, okay? If I know one thing about Sarah, it's that she isn't a morning person. So when Aunt mentioned she had a headache as though we were supposed to do something about it, Sarah wasn't in the mood to deal with her, especially after being woken up from a nightmare. The response Sarah gave was indicative of that. But Aunt didn't seem to pick up on Sarah's drawn-out response. Aunt, I need some ibuprofen. Sarah, there's some in the medicine cabinet. Aunt, well, it's locked. Sarah, then you'll have to wait till Uncle wakes up. Aunt, can't you just unlock it? Sarah looked at me with a raised eyebrow. I was kind of surprised too. The medicine cabinet is locked for a reason, and only Uncle has the key which he keeps hidden in his room. It's locked because I had at one point tried to unalive myself. I'm not going to go into detail about that time, because I don't want to. Uncle had placed a lock on the medicine cabinet after we moved in and told both me and Sarah that if we needed something from it, then we had to ask him, and he'd get it for us. Aunt, of course, had been told about the locked medicine cabinet and told her that we had to come to him for any medicine and not her. Me using sign. Is she serious? Does she know we don't have a key? Sarah, using sign. She's probably too tired to realize that. Just ignore her while I handle this. Aunt, I'm standing right here. Use your words like a grown adult. Sarah, neither of us have a key, Aunt. Uncle told you that we aren't allowed to open it. There's a lock on it for a reason. Aunt, you mean number 31 isn't allowed to open the cabinet because of that little business of... Sarah is very protective of me whenever that day is brought up. We almost never talk about it, and Uncle only tries to talk about it if either of us choose to. It's a sensitive subject, so when Aunt began to try and talk about it so casually, Sarah practically leapt at Aunt's throat, not literally. Sarah, shut up.
Right now.
Understandably, Aunt didn't like that. But as I said in my previous post, Uncle talked extensively about the boundaries that Aunt and Cousin needed to respect. If I remember right, he may have spent an hour or so with Aunt and Cousin before either of us even talked with them. Knowing Uncle, Not hinting at that day or at any form of self-harm was number one on his list. Aunt, don't you talk to me like that. Sarah, I don't care.
Don't ever talk about that day.
What were your words? Oh, right, number 31 is right here. Aunt looked at both of us before huffing like she usually did, obviously knowing that she couldn't go any further. The morning went without interruption. Me and Sarah finished our talk, but not without noticing the continuous glances that Aunt kept giving us, most likely because Sarah wasn't talking at all, just using sign. But the whole time, Sarah kept asking me if I was okay. I wasn't. Even though Aunt may have been too tired to realize what she was saying, she still said it. Sarah confronted her about it, and Aunt admitted that she knew what she was saying, which only upset Sarah. More so, when Aunt refused to apologize. According to Sarah, Aunt said, "Aunt, why do I need to apologize for trying to help number 31? Talking about what happened with loved ones is supposed to help the recovery, while talking with family can help. Aunt is far from being a loved one." Sarah went straight to Uncle, because she had had enough with Aunt. I didn't hear the fight because I was with Kevin in our room. Uncle apparently was already fed up with Aunt because she had asked him if we could have a family meeting to deal with the reason that the cabinet was locked. She wanted the lock gone because she had to go almost 3 hours with a headache, and she shouldn't have had to deal with the headache for that long. In her words, according to Sarah, the fact that no one seems to be helping number 31 deal with the reason she tried to unalive herself is a serious problem. I am receiving professional help, and she was told this. That was the final straw for Uncle, and he outright told Aunt to get out of the house. Aunt tried to argue, but Uncle threatened to call the police if she didn't leave immediately. Apparently, she tried to claim that her flight didn't leave till Saturday, but Uncle promptly offered to give directions to a nearby hotel. But Aunt refused. When Uncle started to pull his phone out, Aunt realized a very big fact. Uncle never makes false threats. Aunt told Cousin they were leaving, and they started packing. The whole time, Uncle made sure they packed everything so that there wasn't a chance that they'd need to make a return trip. Uncle didn't tell us everything that Aunt was saying to him, but Sarah said that she could hear them arguing the whole time. Neither of us said bye to Aunt or Cousin. We agreed to not acknowledge them after Sarah told me what Aunt told her. Aunt has made repeated phone calls to Uncle, but he stopped answering them. Well, this is the end of this interesting story. If you guys have any thoughts or suggestions or an interesting story of your own, do share that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the story, do like this video and subscribe to our channel. You guys can also support us by checking out the links in the video description and the channel's About section. You can watch these videos in the meantime. Hope you guys have a good day. Goodbye.